Good evening, everyone, to part 2 of our Message of Christmas special. Today's episode is entitled Faith Over Fear. We live in a time where fear prevails above all else. Politicians, news media, entertainers, and corporations every day bombard the public with messages of anxiety and fear, directing society down its desired path. But surprising to most, the people of biblical times also lived in the same fear from their leaders. Religious leaders, Pharisees, and kings pushed God's law, and more importantly, the penalties for those who broke them. But on the first Christmas, the chains of fear were broken. For the first time in human history, a message would be given to the masses from a simple carpenter and rabbi that God was not about law, but about love. That God's love was so strong for every human being that a loving God would set them free with mercy and forgiveness. This is the second message of Christmas. Faith over fear. Faith and fear are two sides of the same coin. They both have something in common. They both ask us to believe that something is going to happen that we cannot see. Fear makes us believe that if we don't do something a certain way, we'll have harm brought before us. Faith makes us believe that all things are possible because we have a loving God guiding us and keeping us safe. That God has guides and angels with us at all times to protect us. In a nutshell, fear is using your faith in the wrong direction. And fear does the following 4 things to hinder us. Number 1, fear is karmic. Fear ties us to karma. We are all on a path right now of leaving 3D and entering 5D. What prevents us from moving into 5D are fear and karma, but the two go hand in hand. When we live in fear, we don't make wise decisions. Our insights become clouded. We can act too hastily or foolishly and make mistakes. Fear can allow us to make decisions that cause karmic circumstances to form. When we live in a position of peace, we allow Spirit to take the reins and guide us to the best possible outcomes. The disciples of Jesus were faced with fear many times, but had Jesus to calm them and navigate them through the storm. Fear is also control. Throughout human history, tyrannical leaders could enslave the masses using fear as an instrument of power. We give in to fear because we don't want to be the target of our peers, and we just want to fit in. We choose to live in fear and allow leaders to control us in hopes that we can simply go back to life the way it was, to go back to normal. But this is never the case. Once fear is used to control, there is no going back to normal, as fear becomes the status quo. We see this with the apostles after Jesus died. The religious leaders and governments could not silence them because they learned that that God is with them at all times. They are free, and there's nothing the leaders can do to silence them. Not even threats of death. When you have faith that Spirit has your back, you cannot be controlled by fear. So we know that fear is karmic, and fear can control people. Fear is also contagious. If you have a group of people in a room and one person starts to panic, that panic will spread to others. And before you know it, a stampede of people trying to save themselves and screaming for help from something that they have no idea what they're fearing of becomes a reality. But faith is also contagious. Jesus proved this because his faith and love pulled people from all over the world. Even as he lay in a manger, the animals and the 3 wise men were drawn to the baby Jesus. They didn't know the impact he would have on the world, but already they knew that there was something different about this child. Faith is a calmness that draws us to it. Like small waves on the ocean shore, or small waves of the ocean on shore, we are drawn to the peace and tranquility that faith washes upon us. And lastly, fear can be our defining moment. Fear is a teachable moment because fear itself can teach us to see it for what it is and live in faith. Fear can teach us to stand up for ourselves. It can draw us closer to God. It can also be that which triggers an awakening. It can take us to put on the whole armor of God. And I know some people may roll their eyes at that statement because they think the armor of God is a Christianity metaphor in the Bible. But the armor of God is metaphorical for spiritualists as well, in even more ways than you think. And to be honest, I'm probably going to make a video about that at some point in the future, about putting on the whole armor of God and what each piece of that armor means to us spiritualists. But the armor of God is when we have seen the face of fear so much that when we put the armor on, we can look fear right in the eyes and not blink. Fear not is the most common phrase in the Christian Bible. It is spoken a grand total of 365 times, more so than any other phrase. It is also a message that transcends all religions. Personally, I am glad that the most spoken phrase is that particular phrase. It needs to be driven into the hearts and minds of all people because of the times that we currently live in. Because too many people are walking in fear. But so did Mary and Joseph on the first Christmas. And it was in a manger in Bethlehem that humanity was given an answer to the plague of fear. An ascended master who told people, "Be of good strength and courage. Do not be afraid or fear them, for the Lord your God goes with you in all things, and the Holy Spirit shall never leave or forsake you." I thank you very much for tuning in to today's or this week's episode of the Message of Christmas. We will conclude it next week with probably my more spicy message. And that message will be the message of Christmas, Jesus versus cancel culture. Thank you, and God bless.